Well, hello, everybody. My name is Chris Wysopal. I'm the Chief Security Evangelist and co-founder at Veracode. And today we're going to be talking about AI is writing code, but is AppSec ready? And to have this discussion with me, I have Tejas with me. Tejas, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Chris. First of all, thank you for having me. I was really looking forward to our conversation today. A little bit of introduction on myself. I'm a senior manager of application security at Bloomberg Industry Group, and I lead a very passionate and dedicated team of application security engineers with a goal of maturing our AppSec program to fit it right into the development lifecycle and also aligning it with organization security culture. And today I'm here to represent myself, my personal views, and not from my organization's or my employer's perspective.
Okay, great. Well, we certainly can't ignore that AI is impacting the development lifecycle in a big way. But let's start with the basics. How has the rise of Gen AI impacted the challenges AppSec teams are facing?
I love it. You're taking me right towards the heart of the problem. So before I answer that question, I would like to take a step back and talk about AppSec's traditional problems, and then I can talk about how Gen AI is making things difficult for us. So what have been our traditional problems? And this is based on my experience and also what I have seen and heard from my fellow AppSec leaders. One of our main problem has always been visibility. Since we have moved away from building monolithic applications, and since we have started building a lot of APIs, microservices, serverless applications, developers are simultaneously working on a lot of different small applications or small projects under their responsibilities. And it is a challenge for AppSec teams, AppSec engineers to know what developers are working on, what vulnerabilities or what misconfigurations are being introduced by developers because of the smaller applications that they are simultaneously working on. And this problem is getting worse, in my opinion. You can't secure what you cannot see, and a lot of development teams are building in the dark. The second legacy problem for us has been alert fatigue. We use various different tools for different purposes. We have SAST, DAST, SCA, IaaS, secret management, you name it. And the teams are getting bombarded by all these different violations and alerts that are getting delivered to their Slack channel or email inboxes. And it is difficult for AppSec teams to A, manage these tools, and B, manage violations that come from all these different tools. The third legacy problem is remediation. It has always been there.
Sure.
Finding vulnerability is one thing, but getting it remediated is a whole different game altogether.
Unless you remediate the stuff that's real, what was the point of finding it in the first place?
Yes. So remediation has always been our problem. And the fourth problem from my perspective is a people problem or a skill set problem. AppSec teams have been asked to do a lot, and they are spread very thin. What I mean by asking to do a lot is we are expected to know web application security standards. We are expected to know OWASP top 10, threat modeling, pen testing, DevSecOps, from last few years, cloud security as well. We need to have all these different backgrounds and understanding. So it is not always easy for AppSec leaders to find an experienced application security engineer. So these have been our legacy problems. So coming back to your earlier question, what new challenges Gen AI has introduced? I have a very contradictory view on this. Yes, Gen AI has introduced some new challenges for us, but my personal thoughts are Gen AI has amplified our existing problems rather than creating tons of new problems for us. Yes, there are some new problems, but the main concern is amplification of our existing problems. So if I can explain on that, visibility, the problem has gotten worse because developers are writing code with a rapid speed of development. Because they are getting faster at writing the code, they are creating more and more projects or repositories for AppSec team to manage, and AppSec teams are not growing at the same pace.
More code, more vulnerabilities.
Yes, and that's brings me to my second point. My second legacy problem was alert fatigue. Because developers are writing more code, there is increased code volume. And there is a direct correlation between the increased code volume and the increase in number of vulnerabilities. That means AppSec teams are they are expected to triage more number of vulnerabilities now. The third problem, remediation, it has gotten even worse because higher volume of code generation leads to more vulnerabilities. That means developers have to remediate all those vulnerabilities as well. So remediation problem is getting worse. And the fourth problem, the people problem or the skill set problem that I mentioned. Now AppSec teams, they are expected to know AI security as well.
So now we have new classes of vulnerabilities to look for and worry about.
Yes. And AppSec engineers, they also need to understand how Gen AI has changed the dynamics from developers' perspective, how it is helping developers. So we have to change our mindset as well. So I think the skill set problem is not improving. And that's why I strongly believe that rather than creating tons of new sets of problems for us, Gen AI has actually turbocharged our traditional problems, whereas AppSec teams are still running on the legacy engine.
So I have a follow-up question that goes right along with that. And so some of the data we've been seeing at Veracode is we've been seeing a 47 increase in remediation timelines. So in your experience, what's driving this increase in time? Is it skill gaps, backlog bloat, tool complexity, something else? What is causing the remediation to get slower and slower?
To be honest, I'm not surprised by that number that you mentioned, 47%. There are few reasons for it, and I'm totally in agreement with you. Few examples that you mentioned. Bloated backlog. This problem is getting worse, and I think I touched based on it in my earlier answer as well. We are receiving a lot of different violations from all these different tools. Tools are getting better. That's a good thing. But that also means we are receiving a lot of alerts, notifications, violations. And if AppSec teams, if they are not doing a good job of triaging the vulnerabilities or not doing a good job of prioritizing those vulnerabilities, we are going to end up dumping all those vulnerabilities on developers to remediate. And that's not a good thing. That's how developers and their dev team leads are ending up with a huge backlog of vulnerabilities that they carry from quarter to quarter. And someone has to come in and later fix all that vulnerability backlog.
And no one wants to make a vulnerability remediation push and say, hey, we're going to drop everything and just fix vulnerabilities for a couple of months. The business can't do that. Right? So how do you chip away at this backlog? You can't take time and stop features or building things for customer requests, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think you would need a really strong willpower from senior management for that to happen.
Yeah.
And the second problem I feel is the skill set gap. What Gen AI powered development, has it done? It has made development easy for less experienced developers. You don't even need to have any amount of development background to be a coder, to develop a piece of code. That's a good thing. I'm all in favor of it.
Sure. Yeah, it sounds good on the surface, but there's got to be some unintended consequences of that.
So when it comes to remediation, I have a question for you. Who is more likely to remediate a vulnerability successfully? A skilled developer versus a less experienced developer?
Obviously, you need to have some skill because you have to have the training in how to do it correctly.
Right. And because AI is introducing development to less skilled developers, vulnerability remediation is getting difficult because they don't always have that aspect of remediation related background or how to effectively remediate a vulnerability without refactoring the code or without introducing a new set of vulnerabilities. And going deeper into it, I feel it's a organizational culture problem as well. Almost every organization on this planet is moving towards AI engineering. They are empowering their offerings, their products with some sort of AI capabilities. So senior management of almost every organization, they are talking about putting focus on AI engineering. And I'm a little bit concerned about it because if the senior management, if they are moving the focus away from security towards AI engineering, then that would have a trickle down effect from the senior management to mid tier management, all the way down to the development teams and the individual contributors acting as a developers or as a QA engineers. So, my recommendation to all fellow AppSec leaders or product security leaders is that pay, close attention to the change in dynamics if it is happening at your business or at your organization.
Mhm.
And this is a chance for you to show your leadership skills, show your persuasive skills, and make sure that security is not getting placed on the back burner for the sake of prioritizing AI engineering.
I think there has to be some education to the senior leadership that it's not all rosy using AI generated code, that you are going to be creating vulnerabilities
For-
using those tools. And I think there's a false sense of security, if you will,
Oh, yeah.
that they give very confident answers, right? We all know that Gen AI gives confident answers, and there's this false sense of security that it must be writing secure
Yeah.
code. Of course it would, but we know that's not the
Right.
case.
Gen AI always sounds confident.
Yeah, yeah. So I got another question for
Sure.
you. Some of the tools they're shifting left. They're shifting into be tightly into that developer's daily workflow, and so real-time developer feedback is being positioned as a silver bullet. How is that real-time feedback of security, affecting developers' workflows, their autonomy? How do they feel about it?
It is important, and almost every AppSec leader is thinking about it. And I would say they need to embrace and accept the real-time development feedback. Um, let's take a step back. What is important for developers, though? For them, it's the flow of writing the software. For them, it's the journey or experience of writing the code on their own machine, pushing it to remote Git repositories, then going through the CI/CD pipelines, and ultimately deploying it to production.
And not being disrupted while this is
Yes,
happening.
exactly. So for them, it's the journey, which is important, which is fun. So I definitely feel the real-time development feedback is the critical part, is a bit like silver bullet, but it depends on how we are delivering that feedback back to developers. Are we going to ruin their development experience, or are we going to let them enjoy their development experience but add a security feedback uh, along the way, which would make their experience even better? I think there are few criterias or properties that we have to keep in mind. The feedback needs to be seamless. It should not be siloed. I also think that the feedback needs to be contextual. Only then developers would buy into that mindset. We also need to make sure that the feedback would not only alert about a violation or a presence of vulnerability to developers, but would help them understand the impact of that vulnerability exploitation, the chances of getting that vulnerability exploited. I think only then we would get the attention from developers that we need. And one feedback that I have received from development leaders that I constantly talk with is they are in favor of getting a real-time development feedback, but they are always hesitant or they push back if it's going to ruin their experience or their journey of writing the code. We also have to make sure that feedback aligns with or fits into organization's security culture. And what I mean by that is the feedback needs to be seen as a part of writing quality code. It should not be looked with a suspicious eyes. It should not be siloed. It is something that we need to drill into developers' mindset that this feedback is expected and this feedback will help you write the quality software code, and for which we would need support from the upper tier of organizations to make sure that we are changing our security culture along the lines.
So some of the things I've heard about this feedback is, there's a hope that a developer who has not had a lot of secure coding training, is not a security champion or something like that, is going to be able to learn from this the feedback they're getting real time. Is
Right.
that the case? Do you see that?
Yes, it is something that I have heard from people. But I think I always come back to how we are delivering that feedback. That is more important for me. There are tools available in the market which help developers to learn along the way. But
Yep.
how do we integrate it with their uh, existing playground is more important. I think security needs to meet developers where they live.
Mhm.
Where do developers live? They live in IDE. They live in Git workflows.
Mhm.
So we have to make sure that we are delivering feedback where they would enjoy and appreciate more.
Yeah, I think that getting real-time feedback does help with autonomy because it isn't in some other system that their manager is checking and sending them an
Right.
email. How did this happen? They're getting that directly to themselves and they're making the decision. Do I really need to fix this right now? And I can make that choice.
Right, right. And from my experience, I have also learned one more thing. Uh, in order to make developers on board with our new changes that we introduce from security perspective, we need a buy-in from them.
Mm.
And the security feedback, I feel, should feel like a friendly nudge to developers if they are doing something wrong, and
Right.
should be less like should not be like a slap on their wrist.
More coaching, less
Yeah.
scolding, right?
Yeah.
Right. Everyone loves a good coach.
Right.
No one likes to be told they're doing something wrong in a way that makes them feel diminished.
Right.
And so that's a challenge though, right? 'Cause
Right.
each development culture is a little different. So how do the tool has to be customized, I guess, to the way you're saying, the way that that team wants feedback.
Right. Yeah.
So, we talked about how Gen AI is changing and perhaps exacerbating some of the traditional problems. But we touched on for a second that building AI into your product is introducing new classes of vulnerabilities that we need to worry about. So, how have you been working with your teams when they've been incorporating AI into the products they're building? Prompt injection, training data poisoning, model drift. Are these some of the things that AppSec leaders are learning about and helping their teams with?
Right. This is a new problem that almost every AppSec leader is trying to solve. We are making mistakes and we are learning. Um, the practical guidance that I would give to my fellow colleagues is that we need to spread awareness around AI security. We need to make the senior leadership aware around about the concerns around the LLM models or AI security. We need to educate developers regarding the threats associated with AI security, because developers and senior management, they always get excited with the new shiny thing available in the market. I remember when DeepSeek got released 2 or 3 months back, everyone wanted to evaluate DeepSeek, but
just being a little bit better than the other stuff out there, people want that. It's so competitive. I want the little bit better one, and they jump on it.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we need to do a good job of educating our partners across the aisle and make sure that they understand that AI can be dangerous if it is not handled correctly. What is LLM model? It's just a piece of software, but it is a dangerous piece of software that can think on its own, and we need to control its behavior. If we don't control it, then someone else will do it for us and it won't be good for us.
And that could potentially be the attacker that wants to get at data that you don't want them to have.
Yeah,
that maybe the model knows
Exactly.
because you trained it. Yeah.
So my first guidance would be spreading awareness. And you mentioned few attack examples like prompt injection, model drift, or I think you mentioned some other use cases
training
as well.
data
Training data
poisoning.
poisoning. Yes.
Yeah.
I think we don't have to reinvent the wheel here. A lot of our security best practices would still be applicable to secure against AI or LLM related attacks. It's just that we have to tweak them to make it work for AI. If I could go into the details of prompt injection, what is prompt injection? It means a user or adversary is trying to prompt your system with some malicious request, and your system is responding to those requests, that may bring shame or reputational damage to your business or to your organization. It's similar to an attacker probing your website for vulnerabilities. And what recommendations do we preach, or we have always preached for last 10, 15, 20 years, is input validation, output encoding, right? So similarly, for prompt injection, we have to validate the input. We have to validate the output. There are ways to do it. We can use some sort of guardrail in between that will make sure that this input is accepted or not, whether this output is accepted or not. So I think our existing principle would still fit in. And if I could go into the details of model drift is like hallucination. The model is not behaving as expected or the way we want it to behave. What would be the best way to detect a model drift? Monitoring. And it's something that we have always preached in our field. We need to monitor our products even after it gets deployed in production. So monitoring and feedback loop is a factor. So my thoughts are, like I said, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Our best practices that we have preached from last 15, 20 years would still be applicable. It's just that we have to adjust them a little bit to make it suitable for AI related security matters.
Yeah, I think all these problems can be solved, but yeah, it's going to take a little time to understand the best
Yes.
ways to do it, and then get into the practice of actually doing it. So let's talk about maybe some of the ways that Gen AI can be helpful to application security. I don't think there's an application security company out there that's not talking about Gen AI-based auto-remediation. Do you see this being practical? Is it a silver bullet? What's the impact of using tools, Gen AI-based tools, to actually fix the vulnerabilities created by AI or created by developers, or maybe this backlog that keeps getting bigger?
Right. I'm a huge believer in Gen AI-based remediation. Is it a silver bullet, like you ask? It can be in future. Are we there yet? I don't think so, but we are taking steps towards it. And I have talked with quite a few security vendors and observed some tools which are making progress towards achieving a full Gen AI-based remediation. However, I'm a little bit, hesitant about it as well. So if I could break it down even further, Gen AI-based remediation will be absolutely helpful to handle repetitive vulnerabilities or low-hanging fruits. Things like absence of input validation or misconfiguration or a insecure or vulnerable dependency. Things like that, I'm absolutely in favor of using Gen AI-based remediation. However, I think we are still not there yet to accept Gen AI-based remediation for more complex problems. Problems like business logic flaws, authentication-related issues, session management, or authorization-related issues. To solve those problems, I think there would need to be a human factor involved along with Gen AI-based remediation. I personally would be more comfortable to use Gen AI remediation for low-hanging fruits and finding the right balance between recommended solution by AI and having it validated and weighted by the human user for a complex problem. And talking about finding the right balance, I think Dependabot is a good example. It's an open source tool. I don't want to recommend any tool or vendor over here, but it's a good example that I want to highlight. What Dependabot does is it identifies a vulnerable dependency. If it finds a vulnerable dependency, it raises an MR to upgrade that dependency, but it waits for the developer to review and accept the change. I think we have to find that right balance until we are comfortable to rely fully on Gen AI for automated remediation.
So maybe it's more like it's your pair programmer who is suggesting a fix to you, and you're validating it. You're making sure it's correct.
Yes.
And that could potentially be a feedback loop and a learning experience too. Just like, hey, pointing out, hey, you don't have input validation here. Perhaps Gen AI remediation can say, this is how you should have input validation. This is what the code should look like. So it could build on that
Right.
developer feedback, but it's actually a little better because it's not just telling you about the problem.
Right. And my advice to my fellow AppSec leaders is that Gen AI is helping developers, right? So now we have to accept its help for our tasks as well.
So
We-
maybe we'll have vibe remediation
yeah.
to match with vibe coding.
Do you feel as an industry we are ready to totally rely on Gen AI for remediation? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, so I think definitely people, it's going to take some time to be able to get used to it and confident that it's actually making the right fixes. And I think your point of, so some of the low hanging fruit classes like a cross-site scripting where it needs output and coding, I think that it's going to get traction pretty quickly because it's pretty
Right.
simple fixes, pretty easy to understand what it's doing. Doing more complex things. I'm not sure we're ready there, but we're going to walk before we crawl, and I think it's going to make a huge impact. I mean, if you look at the way Gen AI coding, you know, no one was saying vibe coding like 2 years ago, and now they are. And now we're talking about people who have no coding experience writing programs, where we really weren't talking about that 2 years ago.
Right.
So it's going to move fast, but it's gonna need to evolve a bit.
Right. And like I said, I'm a strong believer in it. We have to accept it.
Yep. So I think we touched a little bit on this, but one of the criticisms of AI produced code is it can create more technical debt and is harder to maintain. Are you seeing this in your environments?
You're absolutely spot on. Um, if I have to take a step back and understand what's Gen AI's purpose for helping developers, it wants to build a code that will work. It doesn't think about security aspect of it that much. It definitely doesn't think about the long-term scalability, maintainability aspect of the code. And it doesn't even know or understand the organization's architectural standard. So it provides the code that will simply run, but in the long run someone had to go back and fix that code to make it scalable, maintainable, and make sure that it aligns with the organization's architectural standard. And I have also felt that the Gen AI generates a repetitive and verbose code that actually leads to more vulnerabilities.
More copy pasting,
Yeah.
less refactoring.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, exactly. And the third aspect that I have is it it's a psychological thing actually. We I'm a little bit worried of the fact that we are in future we are going to accept the code that is generated by AI without even understanding the full functionality of it. And over
It's a little bit of a scary thought, right?
yeah, and over a period of time that would become a black box that no one understands. So that actually is or will lead towards carrying a more technical depth. I strongly believe Gen AI would help developers in cleaning up their sprint cycle, but if not handled correctly, it will increase the technical depth that developers and engineers carry over a period of time.
Okay. So I have one last kind of question looking forward. How do you see AppSec tooling evolving to meet the Gen AI-driven challenges over the next 2-3 years? Is the answer, smarter and more automation, new language models, better context sharing? What improvements are we going to see to meet some of these challenges we've talked about?
I'm glad you're asking me. This is my favorite part, to be honest. I have been talking with a lot of vendors about it. What I would like to see personally is more context awareness for AppSec tools. Um, we all the tools have gotten really good at finding vulnerabilities and reporting vulnerabilities, but we still have some ways to go to make those vulnerabilities context aware. And what I mean by context aware is it an actual piece of code or is it just a test file where the vulnerability was reported? Does the code get executed? Is there a reachability and exploitability factors to it? So we would rely on our security tools and vendors to help AppSec teams identify more context behind the vulnerability.
No one wants to fix a vulnerability in dead code.
Yeah,
right? It's just a
yeah.
complete waste of time, and it's demoralizing.
Yeah, definitely. Developers won't be happy about it as
Yeah.
well. And second is, it's something that we already discussed. Automated real-time feedback for developers. If developers live in IDE, if developers live in Git workflows, we have to meet developers where they would welcome us. That is at IDE and Git workflows. Automated remediation, it's something that we discussed a few minutes ago. I think security tools and vendors, they are taking steps towards it, and that is our future. So we have to embrace that as well. Be cautious, but be ready to embrace it. I think tools would also help us when it comes to validation of the source code that is generated by AI. I'm a little bit concerned about the black box factor that I mentioned earlier. I would rely on my tool to do the license check, to do the verification check, not the verification check, I mean the lineage check, and also make sure that if it's possible, if they can watermark that generated code, that hey, it's an AI generated code versus the human integrated code.
I have heard that as a concern that the recursive learning problem is if the AI start writing all our code and they start learning from AI generated
Right.
code, will amplify all the best and all the worst of the way AI is generating code.
Right.
So let's keep reinforcing it. And I've seen some papers saying that amplifying the worst is a bad bad thing.
Yeah.
So I think we might have to move to something like that where we're marking the AI generated code so we don't learn, the next generation of tools doesn't
True.
learn on that.
True, and I'm glad to know that. And to wrap up, one more point. I think every security tool and vendor, they need to think about the posture of vulnerabilities that they report. A lot of tools are good at reporting vulnerabilities, like I said earlier, but we need to think about the security posture around it as well. And what I mean by security posture is they need to think about, is this internet facing or is it internal only? Is it deployed or is it just in development? Does it have a CISA KEV against it? What's the EPSS factor against it? I think this should be our future. We are in the era of smart and intelligent AppSec where quality matters more than quantity. And I don't think AppSec teams want to get buried under thousands of different vulnerabilities. So if you're asking me about the future of AppSec toolings, it's about being more intelligent, more interactive, and more integrated. If we can align on those 3 points, AppSec tools can definitely help AppSec teams, the in-house AppSec teams, alleviate some of their burdens that we have always carried and the legacy problems that I discussed earlier.
And maybe the developers will like us better.
Yes.
Well, it sounds like we have an exciting future ahead of us with the way Gen AI is impacting everything related to AppSec and development. But it does seem like if we're thoughtful and we build the right things, that it's going to be a net positive for AppSec.
Right. And I want my fellow leaders to be excited about it. Developers are super excited with the inception of Gen AI and how it's helping them. We have to accept and embrace the fact that AI can help security as well. We have to change our mindset a little bit. Be cautious, like I said earlier, but be ready to embrace it.
We can't be saying no to Gen AI. That's not going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
Well, this has been a great discussion. Thank you so much, Tejas, for talking with me today.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. It has been a pleasure talking with you.